Hey friends, this is Marilyn from tarotclarity.com. I know that I've been putting my videos in a wonky order. I'm sorry about that. I've had to make several videos in advance because I won't be available for several days. For those of you who are thinking about getting a reading or whatever, I'll just put it out there. I won't be available until to do readings. I'm just giving myself a break across the board. But I wanted to make sure I had a daily video for you guys between now and next Monday. I think by now you would have seen my Marco Benedetti Gassmann deck. And I think by now you probably would have seen my comparison with two other Gassmann decks. Well, guess what? I had a third one. So now I really had four. Now I have four Gassmanns. That's not even including the tarot decks that might have been based on Gassmann. The Gassmann that I forgot to showcase when I did the comparison between Marco's Isra Node and then a Vu Monde Express was one that was put out by Patrick Valenza of Deviant Moon. Patrick has purchased a few historic tarot decks and he's reproduced them for us, which is awesome. He doesn't do anything to them. I mean, the way they come to him is the way he photographs them. I mean, maybe he has to adjust the light to bring something out in a card or something like that, but he doesn't change the line or color or anything like that. So I think, in the interest of being fair, that I'm going to do a Gassmann video again. This time, not showing all of them that I have. You will have already compared the Benedetti to the Isra Node and to the Vu Monde Express. Today's just going to be the Benedetti with the Deviant Moon copy. Now the Deviant Moon copy is, what date does Patrick put on this? 1860. So now you've seen, was it 1840? I think it was 1840. That was for the Isra Node. The one that was from Vu Monde Express, we're not really sure. They don't commit to a date on that one. And then of course Marco's was 1890, and then this one is 1860. So now we've seen 1840, 1860, 1890. So we know that the Gassmann was in publication for at least 50 years. It was a very popular deck, and for good reason. It's a great deck. No matter who publishes it, it's a great deck. Now bear in mind that we can't really compare the quality of like paper cardstock or anything between this one and Marco's. It would be a unfair thing to do. But let's not just say that the cardstock isn't great. It was made to be a deck of cards, so it was made to shuffle and etc. It'll hold up for sure. So let's flip the camera and we'll get started. So I really do regret that I didn't have this one. I didn't include this one, but sometimes maybe it's easier to just look at two at the same time. And there is I think a significant, well, I'm not positive, but I think there's a significant price differential between the two. Now, as far as the cardstock goes, we have probably up until the Two of Swords, or maybe the Three of Swords. Yeah, the Three of Swords. That's how much thicker the Marco Benedetti deck is. Let's take a sound for their shuffleability. Definitely a good shuffler. It also has the rounded edges, as did the Vu Monde Express deck that had the clothed nude figures. And of course, Marco's is more in keeping with historic. And that sounds, there's no sound like a Marco Benedetti deck for the tarot lovers. The tuck box is just standard. Excuse me. And he dates this one at 1860 and cites it as having plum, orange, and yellow stencil coloring, reproduced from direct scans of an authentic deck in their collection. So it's as I mentioned. And then, of course, I already compared the Marco's. It was the thumb pullouts here and there. So it's great. Plus the box, of course, is gonna last. So here we are. Now remember, they had the different variations we have, the different years or the different houses that published the deck perhaps use different colors, or maybe the times changed and people's aesthetics changed. I don't know. Now, although it seems as though Patrick says that he scanned directly from the cards, I wonder if he chose a darker card to make it look aged rather than white. The optics change if you have like a darker background. This might be in keeping with how it actually looks now with a darker background. But had he used a white background with the same colors, it might have made them pop. So here we can see the difference for sure. But we also see that the line is pretty much the same. The details of the clothing is the same. Colors are different. But we have everything just about the same. And one thing that has carried across is, that the two, especially in the latest deck, right? The two, even from the onset, was a little squarish, right? So they used the same plates, they just changed the colors. And this deck, got into the details a little bit more, just put a little bit more variety in. Excuse me, I'm so sorry. Bear in mind that with the Marcos, at how it differs from the Yves Renaud, if you have Yves, you'll know that Yves had a lot of green, the bright greens, and the colors that were green in Yves are, to me, I perceive them as brown. This would have been an area, this would have been an area. Here, I guess this is kind of this is plum and this is red. Yeah, so you see, here's the plum, here's the brown. And then the Yves, it would have been a bright green. It's so cool, I think, in my opinion, to have the privilege of perusing historic decks, and especially if there's a 50-year range, right? You see, they use the same block. It's the same exact deck, just with different colors. In this case. And I'm so appreciative of all the publishers that we have today who have purchased copies of an original deck and then share them with us. I mean, how wonderful are they for doing that? And even the ones who just purchase the rights from a museum to, scan the originals, those are great too. Now you notice that how the deep blue, it's a saturated blue. It's a handsome blue. It really is rather handsome. If I could describe a color as handsome. But I thought I would be doing you guys a disservice if I didn't show you the Patrick Valencia and the Benedetti. And I think, and I'll put it down in the description area, that I did do a video on the Deviant Moon, the Monde Express, and also Yves. So I do have a video comparing those three. So maybe if I can think of it. And if I forget and you see this video and you look in the descriptive area for it, call me out on it and I'll put it in there for you if I forget. So here we have a plum, and here we have the bright red, and we have the saturated blue. Oh, the blue is, I didn't comment on it as much when I was doing the other videos, but this blue is delicious, I must say. Again, so we see, let me pull the Yves one because I just got to show you the range of the color difference. I'll pull all of them. I'll pull every one of them to show you the range that I think we see clearly with the Hermit. Okay, so in the chronological order as they appeared, the Eves Renaud is 1840. Now this one just said that the deck, the Vaux Monday Express said that the deck had been in publication since 1840, but since it shares in common the color palette with, more or less, with the Yves Renaud, I'm wondering if it also happens to have been an 1840 publication, or at least in the same publication house, or the same publishing house, where they might have used the same colors. Then by 1860, wherever it was, it has a different palette completely. And then by 1890, it has a different palette again. Now, of course, there's something to be said about colors fading or changing, but I don't really think that green would fade to plum. Plum might fade into brown, however, but it's not likely that, a faint, hood, a faint, I guess a pink color would turn more vibrant. So I think it's safe to say that the different publications, they just use different colors. Some of it might be due to fading, but, like this plum would never have faded to intense blue. Now, Marco is a master of color. He doesn't share the information with his publication, whether or not he manipulated the color or not. Oops, what do I have here? How did that happen? Okay, well, I got out of whack. Now, as in comparison to the version that was published by Deviant Moon, I think it's safe to say that these colors are infinitely more vital. I think it comes down to aesthetics, which you prefer and what's in your wallet, right? I think the Eves and the Benedetti decks are probably, more on the costly side, as they should be. And then the Deviant Moon, which is on regular, cardstock for shuffling, cardstock, like for playing cards or something like that, as was Vaux Monday Express, because the quality of paper is different, and it brings the cost down a bit. But you see the overlay that we see here, and I don't think we saw it in the other two decks. The covering of yellow over black. I don't think we saw it in those other decks. I commented on that. But you see the lines of the faces and the wings. Now here we have like in shadow. Isn't that interesting? They have an attempt of putting something in shadow. And here the tower is more colorful. And here we can clearly see the little foliage, but here you have to really look to see. Ooh, so I got out of whack somehow. Hold on. Well, I went into panic mode because when I searched the deck, I couldn't find a star anywhere. So when I went through the Eves, it turns out that the Eves deck and the Benedetti deck are exactly the same size with squared corners. So thank God they have different backs because I I went through it a million times, and I was like, you know what, I'm just looking at the backs, and there it was, stuck out. And it's a good time to show the difference in the backs here. So all 4 of the decks had different backs. So you see that it's the same form, and bear in mind that tarot decks have nudity. So those of you who are offended by nudity, bear in mind that you're going to see some in tarot decks, which is what I showcase regularly. So if you're offended, this channel is not for you or your children. But you see that the detail in the form, even this little, shadow on her tummy, all the same, or her chest is all the same. So they're the same. It's exactly the same, just different palettes. Yeah, the blues and yellows really make a difference. Now here, there was like no attempt, or if there was, it was so faded we don't see it anymore, to delineate the vine. We see it here with the brown. So I don't know how much side by side you want with the pips. Maybe we'll just do the swords and then we'll go through the others a bit more quickly. I don't know how many of you have been watching my political reads, but some of them have been crazy. Not at all what I would think was going on. So I don't know. I don't know if the information is not mine to tell and the universe is just giving me stuff that sounds crazy, or if it really is going to be crazy. Something inside of me, though, tells me, that the next 2 weeks are going to be crazy. And every point thereafter, I think we're just seeing the beginning of, I think we're seeing the beginning of how bad it can get. God forgive me, universe forgive me, I hope I'm wrong and I shouldn't have articulated that, and I take it back, and don't worry, I'll light a candle. But I'm very concerned, and very concerned. Look how happy the Two of Cups is. The Two of Cups and the Four of Coins are just the happy cards in this Gassmann deck. So I think you get the gist. Hey, we have the subdued colors here, and the colors are a bit more bright here, and they're the brightest, I think, in the eaves, right? So the decks vary in your aesthetic tastes, what you're looking for. Okay, so notice the plum versus the bright brown and the red. Color really makes a difference with decks, with everything. The optics, color changes optics for sure. Love the Swiss batons. They're just, I don't know, they're dignified. They're just lovely. then we have the deep blues here again, the saturated blue. And then the saturation, of course, is different in the yellows. The party feel of the 4 of coins. In any deck of Gassmann, it's there. There was a bonus video where I discuss this. Let's see how it is here. I don't think it's the same. Because I think I would have commented on it if it were. So you can see in the eaves and in the others, and including this one, it seems like the outline of the ribbon is done in red. Now, in the other 2 decks, it was on the outside as well as the inside. And then the petals of the inner flower, in some decks, it's more finesse, it's articulated with more finesse, less in this one. And definitely less in this one. They just really put an X marks the spot for the center petals and then just dab dots to show the outline. So it's quite different, which I think is kind of interesting. I probably have these out of order again, but oh well. Okay. What'd I do? All right. And the party time of the 4 of coins. So we have the plum purple that we see this in the Deviant Moon. And we have, love it, we have more browns and the saturated blues in the Marco Benedetti. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Until next time, friends, peace, stay well, be brave, be kind.